Good afternoon, Stefan. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Doing great. How about yourself?
Pretty good. I came back from my parents this weekend, and it's a 5 hour drive. And I was actually at Guitar Center looking at boom arms. I was texting you, and my mom sent me a message. She's like, "Hey, why don't you come down?" And I left from there. I didn't go back to the apartment.
Oh, wow.
I didn't go get clothes. I didn't get toothbrush. I didn't get anything. I literally left from Guitar Center to Galveston on the highway, 5 hour drive.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah, when I got there, I just went to Walmart and got some shirts and some underwear, and
Right. It's nice to be able to take off when you need to. You
yeah,
know?
it was good. So we went to the beach, got kind of drunk,
Yeah.
had some fun.
Galveston. Shout out.
Yep. So tonight we're talking about a case that is not from America.
Definitely not. We're going out of the U.S. for this one. It's something new. The story we talk about tonight is one of a relationship gone wrong. In Australia, 2001, John Price was found dead in his home, butchered beyond recognition. When friends come to check on him because he didn't show up for work for several days, the scene they stumble on will haunt them and local police for the rest of their lives. In the following hours, they'll try to piece together the story of what actually happened to John and how this extreme act of violence left their friend without his life. Katherine Knight, John's girlfriend, would later be found guilty of the murder and would go down in history as one of the most brutal murderers in Australia's history. Knight would be the first woman in Australian history to be given the life sentence without the possibility of parole. But before we start to talk about the acts Knight committed at the time of the murder, I feel it's really important to recognize and consider how she was able to commit such an act of unspeakable horror. Her upbringing and experiences would be the catalyst to shape a killer full of rage and impulsion. To represent an accurate representation of who this woman is, we must consider what Katherine Knight has experienced in her life to be able to bring her to the point where she could kill her loved one in cold blood. And that's where our story starts.
So Catherine Mary Knight was born in a small town called Tenterfield, Australia, in 1955. Born to Barbara Rohan and Ken Knight, Catherine would experience a very hard childhood filled with family dysfunction. When the family moved to Tenterfield, New South Wales, Barbara gave birth to 4 children. 2 of the children that were born were twins, and the parents would name the youngest Catherine. Catherine was exposed to her father's abusive and drunken behavior from a very early age. Knight's father, a drunkard who was openly violent would rape his wife up to 10 times a day. Her mother, Barbara, would tell the twins of the intimate details of her sex life and how much she despised sex and men altogether. As Catherine grew, she would complain to her mother that one of her partners wanted her to do a sex act that she didn't want to do. Her mother's only reply was, "Put up with it and stop complaining." Catherine claims she was frequently sexually assaulted by several of her family members, although not by her father, which lasted until the girl was 11 years old. Psychiatrists accept her claim as well as her family members who corroborated these horrific events. Abuse by Ken and Barbara would scar the kids and would only add fuel to the fire that was to come in the future of their daughter. And so, obviously from a young age, she distrusts men.
Yeah,
I mean,
almost immediately.
Yeah, I mean, her mom, right? Her mom hated men and showed it, very clearly to her children.
I mean, imagine what it's like to grow up in a household like that.
And how scary must that be for a young girl, who might start to like boys and start to be around them, to not even know how to treat them because, she's been taught to hate them.
Right. And she, just as a person, from what I've gathered, seemed very like an aggressive person already. She just had an aggressive demeanor. So it's weird. You'll see in the story later to come, she almost will like mimic things that her father has done. And I think it's almost like a little kid, you make friends with your monsters when you're scared as a little kid.
Yes, I mean, when that's all that you know, when that's what you're being taught, you come to accept it and
It's
love it.
normalized,
And
yeah.
exactly, it's very normalized.
So while in school, Catherine was known as a loner and a bully by her schoolmates. And on one occasion, she actually assaulted a male student with a weapon. Knight also injured a teacher who was later found to have acted in self-defense against Catherine. An interesting detail here is that when Catherine wasn't having issues with her classmates or teachers, she actually managed to be a pretty well-mannered girl. She had often won several rewards because of her good behavior. Now, I think it's safe to say that she didn't have very many friends. Apart from her twin sister, the only other person that Catherine enjoyed being around was her uncle, Oscar Knight. When Oscar committed suicide in 1969, Catherine was heartbroken, and still to this day, she maintains that his ghost visits her. So, and that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It seems like an interesting detail, and it gives you sort of an insight to Catherine's mind and her worldviews.
Yeah, I mean, if she honestly believes that she's, and this is not to put down ghosts or people that believe in ghosts. I mean, it's not to put down anyone that says. I'm not just going to say that. Anyone that believes in ghosts, you know what, they're insane.
Right.
But if she still believes that her uncle is, coming and following her and visiting her from beyond the grave.
Yeah, and I tried to find because this struck me for some reason. This struck like a chord in me, so I tried to find like what the ghost had said to her. Like I couldn't really find anything on it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if she's, like I said, if she's still, having visits from her dead uncle from beyond the grave,
Yeah.
it kind of shows what is her mind doing. What is her mind doing that allows this to happen?
Well, yeah, I think this goes back to the trauma issue as well. We're talking about a very traumatized, from a very young age, almost immediately child. Like, she's so, children are like sponges, more than me.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So somehow, without learning to read or write, Katherine Knight leaves school at the age of 15 and gets a job cutting fabric at a local clothing factory. A year later, Knight is offered a job as a local abattoir, which is basically just a slaughterhouse, in other words. And she actually called this her dream job. She started cutting up offal and was quickly promoted to boning, and was given her own set of butcher knives. Knight had an affinity for knives and loved to show her collections off to people. Co-workers have been quoted to say that it was obvious she knew how to use a knife. At home, she would hang her prized set of butcher knives above her bed so that they, quote, would always be handy if I needed them. She would go on to do this everywhere she lived until she was arrested.
Yeah, she hung, or at least, put up knives above her bed.
Right.
So if she needed them, I mean, does that sound like someone who's very paranoid to you? That, she loved knives. What I'm saying is she had to have them for protection. She probably believed maybe someone was out to get her.
I mean, maybe.
Which could just be part of a paranoid, schizophrenic sort of mindset. This person that's obviously troubled probably might have some, paranoia issues.
Right. And I think it's also important to consider, like, where they were. I mean, where they were is known to be sort of a rough and tumble part of Australia. These people are tough. They work hard.
Mm-hmm. They party hard, too.
Yeah, and these people, they like what they like, obviously. And she was just a little eccentric about her love of knives.
Yeah. In 1974... Catherine is now 19 when she marries her co-worker, David Stanford, Colette, and enjoys utterly dominating. When the couple arrives on their wedding day, they show up drunk on a motorcycle. As the couple began to get ready, Barbara, Knight's mother, pulled Colette aside and told him, "You better watch out for this one, or she'll fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way, or do the wrong thing, and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her. She'll fucking kill you." This turned out to ring true later on that night, when Knight attempted to strangle Colette because he fell asleep after having sex 3 times. The violence didn't stop throughout the relationship. In fact, it would only get worse from here. On one occasion, a heavily pregnant Knight burned all of Colette's clothing and shoes after hitting him across the face with a frying pan because he had come home late from a dart competition. Later, Colette was treated for a severely fractured skull. The police were shocked when they wanted to press charges on Knight, but Kellett refused to do so after having a conversation with her. How she did this or what she said is unknown, but it's easy to see that Katherine could manipulate her husband with relative ease. For that matter, she seemed to manipulate and control all of her partners in the future as well. Not only would Knight physically abuse her spouses, but she would also try and do anything she could to ruin the lives of anyone that she felt crossed her.
And you'll see this with her relationships to come, as Kenny said. She was pretty vindictive if, like, she felt she was wronged in any sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, we see that so much right here. I mean, she hits him in the head with a frying pan, causes, a lot of damage to his skull.
Don't forget about their beautiful wedding night also.
Yeah. And wasn't that because... So they had sex 3 times, right? But she thought that they were supposed to have sex... What, like 5 times?
Well, yeah, I think she said something to the effect of, like, my parents would have sex.
They said
this many amount of times.
That's what I think she said that, yeah, her mom told her that on her wedding night they had sex 5 times. Right. So Katherine only had sex 3 times, and she was pissed and tried to strangle him. So that kind of shows who we're working with. And then of course, yeah, she was able to manipulate, Colette whenever he, they wanted to press charges. The police wanted to press charges.
Just after one simple conversation, she is actually able to sway his mind in the opposite direction. Still concussed, probably, from the frying pan hit.
Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah. After Kellett leaves Knight for another woman, Knight is sent into a rage and will stop at nothing to get back at him. The day after he leaves, Knight is seen with their daughter in a pram walking down the street. She is seen acting very erratic and violently throwing the pram from side to side. After this incident, Knight is admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital, where she's diagnosed with a postnatal depression and spent weeks in an inpatient recovery facility. Shortly after being released, Knight actually placed her 2-year-old daughter on the railway line before a train was due to pass by. After leaving her daughter, she is reported to have stolen an axe from the local store and threatened to kill several people. Luckily, a local had seen Knight put her daughter on the tracks and saved her moments after Knight left. Knight was again arrested and admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital, where she signed herself out the next day. Not only did Knight abuse her husband, but now their daughter was at risk due to her rage that lived inside of her.
And how did she get released the next day? Did they not have... She tried to kill her daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, she put her daughter on the railroad tracks.
And how was her daughter not taken away? Yeah, and
yeah, that's absolutely insane. I mean, her daughter should have been taken away. And also, there's no way that she should have been released.
I guess
that's attempted murder.
Yeah, right.
Of a child.
Again, though, she is a master manipulator. She's done it her whole life. She's not stopping now. You know what I mean? Especially, it is her daughter. I truly believe that she probably loved her kids. And, I mean, even though she was maybe psychotic, she had a psychotic break. And
yeah,
that's how
it
she
should have
acts.
been enough. It should have been enough, definitely, to have her daughter taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sad.
True, it is. Knight would have a slew of other abusive relationships in the following years. In 1986, Katherine is reported to have slit the neck of her boyfriend David Saunders' dingo pup right in front of him. She told him this is what would happen if he ever had an affair, then knocked the man unconscious after hitting him with a frying pan. 3 years later, she would end up stabbing David twice in the chest and his stomach and hit him in the face with an iron. After he leaves town and goes into hiding to try and get away from Katherine, she tries to pry information from mutual friends of his whereabouts, but to no avail. Abandoned and rage-filled, Catherine reports to the police that she is scared of David Saunders and has issued an apprehended violence order, basically a restraining order in U.S. words. In the years to come, she would have a relationship with 2 other men, one of which would lose their life due to her blind rage.
Yeah, so she has something about hitting men in the face with frying pans and irons and stabbing them in the chest with her knives that she keeps above her bed. So this is getting kind of crazy.
Yeah, she has like a repeated pattern of behaviors that she seems to do a lot. At this point, you know, she has kids, she's putting them in danger, she's moving from relationship to relationship, and abusing everyone.
I say very, very violent relationships. And I think I read, eventually everyone in this town sort of knew her for this violent reputation that she had built for herself. So a lot of guys were sort of staying away. She had a few boyfriends that she would abuse, but that word of that kind of got around. And so eventually she definitely wasn't very active, right? She was going to bars and everyone kind of knew who she was until she met,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this is interesting too. Like, I purposely didn't want to talk about her children, really. I wanted to sort of leave them out of the story because they're not all that important to the acts that were committed. But the thought does occur to me because abuse is passed down from parents to their kids for generations. It's a fact. It's just what happens. Mm-hmm. But I wonder how her children were affected by her behavior. I mean, I can only hope that they're doing well, but...
Yeah, I mean, like you said, abuse passes down from generation to generation. It doesn't necessarily mean that her children will become killers. I mean, remember, Of course, Catherine was a twin. And her twin didn't kill anyone. Right?
Yeah, definitely not.
And so we can say a lot of it has to do with how her childhood was.
Right.
But it's obviously not all of that. There was something chemically wrong with her. That she had mental issues. She had problems before anything. Probably from a very young age, from when she was born, that are just there.
Right.
And so because you see people have. To sort of get on this topic again, you see people have awful childhoods and be very abused, loved by no one, and turn out to just be very civilized working adults who have families and raise kids the right way. Normal people. So it's not all about the childhood. The childhood. It has a lot to do with her mental capacity. What was going on in her head after? It's like, if she had a perfect upbringing, she would still be messed up. She wouldn't be, she would still have mental problems.
Right.
Now, whether or not she would have killed someone, whether or not she would have been as crazy as she was, is up for debate. But so I think it is a mix of her childhood and just these fundamental mental issues.
Right. And actually, this case is super interesting because we mentioned earlier she was a twin. So biologically, I mean, we can look at the life of Katherine Knight, and then we can look at her sister. They have basically almost the same body, essentially, like DNA wise.
Yeah, they were identical twins.
Right. So what is it about that? Oh.
What is it about Catherine?
Yeah.
Catherine that made her the way she was and her twin different. And that kind of goes into a lot of more human biology, just
right,
a bunch
definitely.
of different stuff that, I don't know if I can get into because
I
don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, but
and,
I mean...
was Catherine treated worse? Probably not. She probably had a very similar upbringing to her twin sister.
Yeah, I mean, her twin definitely experienced at least some of the same
It is pretty
things.
interesting that, Catherine came out different, than her twin sister.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. Like, there is sort of an aspect to like the biology, just like being more prone, and sometimes those differences are so small, like even with
Yeah.
twins, it can shape and mold a killer.
Yeah, definitely. So Katherine Knight's final partner and victim was named John Charles Thomas Price. John Price was a father of three and was known to be a great person by all who knew him. Price's own marriage had ended in 1988, and while his daughter stayed with his former wife, his two boys lived with him. In 1995, after dating for some time, Catherine moved into John's house, and for a while they got to experience a relatively normal life together. John's children actually took a liking to Catherine and embraced her as a mother figure. John was a hard-working man who worked at the local mines and was able to provide a comfortable life for his family. Besides a couple of violent fights, the couple was said to have been very happy, at least for a moment. In 1998, after an argument that the couple had, Knight took some pictures of a first aid kit that Catherine reported John had stolen from his job site. In reality, John actually didn't steal anything at all. When the mine's first 8 kids expired, he decided to not let anything go to waste and ended up taking them home. After 17 years of loyalty to his company, he was let go for supposedly stealing. The same exact day, he would kick Catherine out of his house and refuse to talk to her for weeks. Although they would start to see each other again, John Price wouldn't allow Catherine to move in with him again. During this time, John's friends caught word that the couple had begun to see each other again and refused to be around John as long as he put up with Catherine's extreme behavior.
And again, this is like her pattern continues even further now.
The manipulation?
Yeah, and when he finally says enough is enough, she tries to ruin him. She hurts him financially.
Yeah, she takes away his right to work, his right to live, to earn money. I mean, he was at that job for 17 years.
17 years and they let him go.
That's insane. And so Price kicked her out, but he keeps bringing her back. He can't let go. I'm curious why. Is the sex that good? I mean, honestly, it sounds like a joke, but what is happening? I mean, is she manipulating him that much?
Yeah, I think she was a master manipulator. Definitely. I don't know what she was saying to these guys, you know what I mean? But
I just don't know how anyone could ever let her back in. I mean, maybe she is. I mean, maybe he loved her. He obviously loved her. So he loved her so much, and because of that, it was easier for her to manipulate him. And after doing all these things, and after having such a violent past with former partners and with him, to a slight degree, and getting him fired from a 17-year job, she still was able to convince him to at least have her back in his life, even if they didn't move back in with each other right away, at least.
yeah, definitely. I think at least in this case, it's sort of like misery loves company. He couldn't stay away from her. So in February of 2000, a series of assaults on Price culminated with Knight stabbing Price in the chest. Finally fed up, he kicks her out of his house. On February 29th, he stopped at Scones Magistrates Court on the way to work and took out a restraining order in an attempt to keep her away from both him and his children. That afternoon, Price told his co-workers that if he didn't come to work the next day, it would be because Knight killed him. They pleaded with him, told him not to go home, and he told them that he believed that she would actually kill his children if he didn't come home. Price arrived home to find that Knight, although not there herself, had sent the children away for a sleepover at a friend's house. He then spent the evening with his neighbors before returning home and going to bed at 11 p.m. Earlier that day, Knight had bought new black lingerie and videotaped all her children while making comments which have since been interpreted as crude will. Knight later arrived at Price's house while he was sleeping and sat watching TV for a few minutes before having a shower. She then woke Price and they had sex, after which he fell asleep. At 6 a.m. the next day, A neighbor became concerned that Price's car was still in the driveway, and when Price did not arrive to work, his employer sent a worker to see what was wrong. Both the neighbor and worker tried knocking on Price's bedroom windows to wake him, but after noticing blood on the front door, they alerted the police, who arrived at 8 a.m. Breaking down the door, police found his body, with Knight comatose, taking a large number of pills. She had stabbed Price with a butcher's knife while he was sleeping. According to the blood evidence, he awoke and tried to turn on the light before attempting to escape while Knight chased him through the house. He managed to open the front door and get outside, but either stumbled back inside or was dragged back inside, into the hallway, where he finally died after bleeding out. Later, Knight went to Aberdeen and withdrew $1,000 from Price's ATM account. Price's autopsy revealed that he had been stabbed at least 37 times, in both the front and the back of his body, with many of the wounds extending to the vital organs.
Several hours after Price had died, Knight skinned him and hung the skin from a meat hook on the door frame to the lounge room. She then decapitated him and cooked parts of his body, serving up the meat with baked potato, pumpkin, beetroot, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash, and gravy in 2 settings at the dinner table, along with notes beside each plate, each having the name of one of Price's children on it. She prepared to serve his body parts to his children. A third meal was thrown on the back lawn for unknown reasons, and it's speculated that Knight had attempted to eat it, but could not, and this was put forward in support of her claim that she has no memory of the crime. Price's head was found in a pot with vegetables. The pot was still warm, estimated to be at around between 40 and 50 Celsius, which is 104 Fahrenheit and 122 for all the Americans, indicating that the cooking had taken place in the early morning. Sometime later, Knight arranged the body with the left arm draped over an empty 1.25-liter soft drink bottle with the legs crossed. This was claimed in court to be an act of defilement, demonstrating Knight's contempt for Price. Knight had left a handwritten note on top of the photograph of Price, bloodstained and covered with small pieces of flesh. The note read, and this is kind of confusing, so I'm going to try my best. Time got you back, Jonathan, for raping my daughter. You too, Beck, for Ross, for Little John. Now play with Little John's dick, John Price. The accusations in the note were found to be groundless.
Yeah, so she basically tries to say that John was touching his son.
Yeah, that he raped her daughter.
Right.
And so
And this is
all
why.
groundless, and the note is really hard to read, and it's
not coherent.
not coherent. Things are misspelled. Daughter is spelled Douter. I don't think that's right in any country.
And raping is spelled with 2 P's.
It's rapping.
Rapping. He
Right.
rapped to her daughter.
Yeah. So yeah, the note's kind of incoherent, but it looks like she put this note on his body to try to say that he deserved this. He raped my daughter and touched his son or whatever,
Right.
and so it's like, if I put this note here that obviously I wrote because it was in her handwriting, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll believe her and say, "Oh, okay, well."
Well, regardless of the claim or not, she skinned a man, decapitated him, cooked his body.
Yeah.
I mean, she did a lot. She cut off his genitalia, nailed it to the wall. The police saw that when they walk in.
And they saw the skin hanging down.
Right.
They thought it was, what, sheets or something?
Yeah. The officer said when he walked in, he walked through the door frame basically and moved this sheet out of the way, and he noticed something was wet on his arm, and he
was
looked
blood.
and it was soaked in blood.
He noticed that it was not a sheet.
Yeah. It was a sheet of
humans-
sorts.
Of human skin.
Yeah.
So we've talked about her stabbing her partners in the chest and hitting them over the head with frying pans and trying to choke them out. And now she has gone far, obviously. Now
Even
she
farther
is-
than her father at this point. She's lost all control.
Oh,
She's
God.
just driven by rage. She can't help
something,
herself.
driven by a demon or something. I don't know, but she's cooking the head. She's, the way she put the food on the table, of course, with the little place cards shows she was going to feed. She wanted to feed the father to his children.
Yeah, and
Absolutely
then
mind-blowing.
I also heard that the meat that they found in the backyard could have been used to feed to the dog.
Yeah, but it didn't look to be to have been eaten at all.
Right, and it was actually his butt muscles. She took his gluteus maximus and cut it into 5 pieces.
Well, that's probably not going to be too easy to eat.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Tough, strong meat, that is. So Knight's initial offer to plead guilty to manslaughter was rejected when she was arraigned on March 2nd, 2001, on the charge of murdering Price, to which she entered a plea of not guilty. Her trial was initially fixed for July 23rd, 2001, but was adjourned due to her counsel's illness, and it was prefixed for October 15th, 2001. When the trial commenced, Justice Barry O'Keefe offered 60 jury prospects the option of being excused due to the nature of the photographic evidence, which 5 accepted. When the witness list was read out to the prospects, several more also dropped out, after which the jury was impaneled. Knight's attorney then spoke to the judge, who adjourned the following day. The next morning, Knight changed her plea to guilty, and the jury was dismissed. It was now made public that Justice O'Keefe had been advised of the plea change the day before. He had adjourned the trial and then ordered a psychiatric assessment overnight to determine if Knight understood the consequences of a guilty plea and was fit to make such a plea. Knight's legal team had planned to defend Knight by claiming amnesia and disassociation, a claim supported by most psychiatrists, although they did consider her sane. 2 psychiatrists concluded Knight had suffered from borderline personality disorder.
So no reason has ever been given for the guilty plea, and despite giving it, Knight has refused to accept responsibility for her actions. At the sentencing hearing, Knight's lawyers requested that Knight be excused to avoid hearing some of the facts, but the application was refused. When Timothy Lyons took the stand and described the skinning and decapitation, Knight became hysterical and had to be sedated. And I think that's insane.
Yeah.
So she had to become, she became hysterical and had to be sedated.
Yeah, she
when they
broke
just started
down.
reading what she did.
Right.
This is stuff that she did.
She,
It's pretty interesting.
She was then, it may have just been hitting her that she was actually responsible for her actions at this moment,
Definitely. So on November 8th, Justice O'Keefe pointed out that the nature of the crime and Knight's lack of remorse required a severe penalty. He sentenced her to life in prison, refused to fix a non-parole period, and ordered that her papers be marked never to be released. The first time that this had been imposed on a woman in Australian history.
In June 2006, Knight appealed the life sentence, claiming that the penalty of her life in prison without possibility of parole was too severe for the killing. Justices Peter McClellan, Michael Adams, and Megan Latham dismissed the appeal in the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal in September, with Justice McClellan writing in his judgment, "This was an appalling crime, almost beyond contemplation in a civilized society." And this really goes to show how delusional Katherine Knight really was. She thought that her crimes, or her punishment, was too severe for her crime.
Yeah, and that makes no sense. How is the punishment? She chopped her lover's head off and cooked the body and put it on
Skinned
plates.
him.
Skinned the body, cooked the body with vegetables and put them on plates for his children to eat. I mean, and she doesn't think that she deserves life in prison. What is she going to do if she gets out?
I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, if she gets out, is she just all of a sudden not going to be crazy? She spent her entire life
Right.
being crazy. So
Well, it's in her file the judge wrote. He said, "Do not let her out.
yeah,
Don't."
never to be released.
Right.
Right. which I guess maybe she was just thinking, you know what, I'm the first and only woman to ever be sentenced to life in prison in the entire country. Maybe she's saying, it might be easy to get this appealed.
Right.
You know.
And even still, like, to this day, she says she doesn't know what happened, and she had no idea.
What do you think about the disassociation claim? Because we talked about that with who do we talk about that with? The disassociation.
BTK.
Yeah. Because
compartmentalizing.
Yeah. That's right. So this is different, but this is like.
But it's still sort of the same. In a way.
It's just BTK had more of a control. He had more control over what he was doing,
right.
And if this disassociation is true with Katherine Knight, it shows that she wasn't in her. That she might not remember it.
Right.
Not to say that she, shouldn't be punished because she did it. She's insane. And I don't even know if I believe that. I mean, it showed that most psychiatrists agreed with the fact that they were saying that she was disassociating the entire crime, with her life. So she may not remember doing it. She may not have been all there while she was doing it.
Right.
I don't know if I even necessarily believe that. I mean,
well, listen, in court, if she's breaking down after hearing her crimes, if you ask me, I think she knows exactly what happened. I think she probably did have a psychotic break, but she knows what she did.
Do you think she was all there?
No.
While she was doing it?
Probably not.
Do you think she remembers?
Yes.
You think she remembers?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just easy to say that she probably remembers it.
Yeah, and I find it funny that, her wedding night to her first husband, she tries to strangle him after going to sleep after three bouts.
Yeah, 3 bouts of sex. We should have done it 5 times.
Right.
It's like, that first one, that just shows that she's absolutely insane.
It really foreshadows the future. I can almost picture in my head this woman standing over him with a knife, thinking, feeling abandoned just like she always has, getting into her spiral of rage, and just it's so easy for me to picture.
Yeah.
Based on her previous actions.
Yeah, definitely. And it's weird that she sent his children away that night too. So she sent his children away to.
That's true. That's another good indicator.
To be at not a babysit, but like a sleepover at their their friend's house.
Right.
So she knew he was going to be home alone because the kids were gone. So she definitely planned it. It seems like there was a lot of premeditation done with the crime, because she was planning it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good indicator that she at least was planning something.
She didn't just... Well, and that's the thing. So if she was planning it, if it was premeditated, did she snap? Had she been planning to do this and then decide not to?
Mm-hmm.
They had sex.
Right.
So they had sex, he fell asleep. He woke up to her stabbing him.
Right.
And so, was it premeditated? If it was premeditated, then I don't buy the thought that she had a mental break, because she premeditated it and then decided not to go through with it and then had a mental break.
I think she was probably just in a period of unstableness. However long that period lasted, if it was that night or if it was a couple weeks, she was clearly already going. She was upset.
Yeah.
And judging from her previous actions, we all know she's fueled by rage. She's willing to do anything. And that was just the last time that John Price would ever slight her in any way just for falling asleep, She'll make sure of that.
Yep. And now she wants, now she doesn't think she should be in prison forever.
Right.
It's like, what are you going to do? Get out, find a new person to abuse and manipulate?
Right.
I
just think it's weird that her story has changed, a couple times. She says she's not guilty, then she says she's guilty, then she says it's too severe. So her punishment is too severe.
Yeah, and she never really came. I mean, she doesn't show any type of remorse, right? Does she?
No.
She doesn't really accept responsibility.
Yeah,
but she still says that she's guilty, though.
Yeah, this is where the dissociation comes in, is where she won't admit that she did it still to this day.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Why would she even? I wonder why. I wonder if her lawyers had some say into whether or not she would say she was guilty. If she, did her lawyers tell her to plead guilty?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Because why would she plead guilty if she won't accept responsibility for it? Does she think that maybe the judge will go easier on her? I mean, she's not, mentally stable. She's never made, good decisions
Right.
with anything.
I don't know. I mean, imagine being a defense lawyer in this case. You know what I mean? I mean, imagine what these lawyers went through. I mean,
What's funny is I think that the lawyers would have had a better chance of claiming the amnesia and the disassociation and trying to get her not guilty. I don't think a not guilty verdict would have been reached either way. Obviously, she was guilty.
right.
However, they may have gone easier on her in the sentencing process. Maybe. Probably. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. The appeals may go easier, possibly. But then again, if she's seen as someone that, I mean, I guess I was going to say, if she's seen as someone that has pled not guilty and will not accept responsibility, her appeals probably won't go very well. But she's already not accepting responsibility, so who knows why she pled guilty.
Right, and her actions were so extreme. There's a difference between killing someone in a psychotic break and then, killing someone in a psychotic break and then skinning them and then chopping their head off and putting it in a pot and trying to serve it to the victim's kids.
Yeah, and let's not forget that she tried to kill herself, right?
Yeah,
She took all these pills.
Why
why did she do that?
When they broke in the house at first, it said that they didn't know she was there.
Yeah.
And they could hear her snoring.
Yeah, they thought she was sleeping.
Yeah, exactly. And they found her. She was, had taken a whole bunch of pills, was incapacitated, and they drug her out of the house and revived her.
Oh. So if she's trying to kill herself, can we say that she knows what she did was wrong? I mean, how many times did she try to kill herself in the past? Right.
Well,
I mean, she tries to kill herself the same night she killed someone. I don't know if I buy the whole disassociation or the memory thing. I think she remembers it, and I think she just lost control.
yeah.
I think she remembers it, and she knows exactly what happened. Because after all of this happened, after John Price was dead, she tried to kill herself. She knew what she was doing, and she knew that what she did was wrong.
Yeah, totally.
And so she tried to off herself because of it.
And the evidence was stacked against her. That, like,
it was obvious.
Killing someone in a blind rage is way different than killing someone and then, desecrating the body. I don't know. I just think the evidence is mounted against her.
Yeah. All right, guys. So this was the case of Katherine Knight. I think we showed that she was a psychotic murderer who, had a history of abuse, who, with every partner that she had, would just terrorize and manipulate them and beat them. And, it showed. And I think one of her partners, I can't remember which one it was short, right? She was like 5'10" or something. She was pretty tall. He was like 5'6", and she was strong. She'd been working her entire life, killing cattle, right? Using knives and doing whatever with her family. And so she was very strong. And so I feel like she probably actually went for physically weaker men as well, at least in one or two of her partners.
I really do think a lot of her father's qualities got passed down to her. I believe that she kept that going. Like, he was basically living through her, or the abuse of that family was living on through Katherine.
Definitely. And that makes sense, So I hope that we got this out as cohesively as possible. I think that we did. What do you think, Stefan?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did a good job. Guys, this is a pretty clean-cut, easy case to look at. There's not a whole bunch of background details that's really necessary, but we sort of wanted to just build this story up and do our best and take a crack at it.
Still very disturbing.
Yeah, it's messed up. Like, it really shows you what people are capable of at their most rage-filled and and
And
psychotic.
you could see this one coming from a mile away. I think a lot of people that lived in the town that she lived in knew that she was capable of something like this. And John Price, the night before he died, warned coworkers that he thought she was going to kill him or his children.
He told the court,
Yeah.
like, listen, this lady is crazy. Get her away from me. And
Yeah.
they were,
But he kept going back.
But he
Remember
kept going
the guy
back.
before Ketter? Or-
David Saunders.
Yeah, David Saunders before John Price.
Mm-hmm.
He hid. He went to a different town and hid away from her.
Yeah, he tried to get out.
He had to run and hide.
Oh, and
John Price probably could have done the same thing.
Yeah,
And
Colette did that too.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
And actually, there was a period of like a 3-month break in John Price and Katherine Knight's relationship.
Yeah, but
But they started talking again.
Exactly.
And even his friends told him, they're like, listen, dude.
they stopped hanging out with
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Stop being friends with
If
this dude.
you're going to
because
keep
of her.
bringing her around, then we don't want anything to do with you or her. We're over it. So
If anyone has any... If anyone has anything that you think that we missed, send us an email. Our email is thestrangelandpodcast@gmail.com. You can find our Facebook at facebook.com/thestrangelandpodcast. And we are on whatever listening platform you are on right now,
all of them.
as well as iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio. We're on YouTube if you just search up the Strangeland Podcast. We're on SoundCloud if you do the same. We're on Google Play. Did I say that? I think I said Google Play.
We're on all the Googles.
Yeah, we're on mostly everything. There's a couple... We're on all the Googles. There's a couple apps that I don't think I've been able to work yet, but I'm trying to get everything.
Is our Spotify coming?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Joe Rogan's not even on Spotify.
Really?
You know that?
No.
I mean, Generation Y, they're on Spotify.
Right.
I think Joe Rogan's not on Spotify because he chooses not to be. But Spotify is kind of a bitch, and they're not easy to get on. I don't know. We might be on Spotify one day.
I've seen
6 months from
questionable podcasts on Spotify.
Yeah.
I have faith in us.
I put the application in like a
Right.
month ago. Basically, you put the application in for Spotify. They come back and send you something saying whether or not they'll allow you to. When Spotify first started putting podcasts up, they didn't really open it up to much. They didn't even have an application for it in the beginning. They had
Wow.
to basically, I don't know how you had to get on there. They don't just have like an RSS feed, because how we get everything on all the apps is we have an RSS feed that's linked to our website and linked to SoundCloud, and I put those up. But on Spotify, you can't just give them your RSS feed. You have to apply and then give them your RSS feed.
That seems intuitive.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you're not listening on Spotify, you can find us, guys.
Find us anywhere else. Next week, what are we talking about, Stefan?
So next week comes some big timers. We have the
From
DC
2002.
Snipers. Yeah, 2002, the DC Snipers. Very interesting case. These guys were pretty interesting personalities, to say the least.
Yeah, pretty messed up. And what they did was something that I always thought was straight out of Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, it
I mean,
really does
was.
seem that
when
way.
you go play Grand Theft Auto, well, I just had this conversation with my mom last night about how she was, I don't know, they were just talking about violent video games, and I told her, I was like, dude, I played Grand Theft Auto from when I was 10 till now.
Right.
It's Grand Theft Auto is my favorite video game franchise of all time. You don't see me going and sniping people.
Well, yeah, you could. I mean, Katherine Knight's twin could say that too, right? I went through
Exactly.
10 years of abuse, and I wasn't a, psychopath killer.
Yeah, it just depends. But anyways, it was something out of a Grand Theft Auto game.
Right,
It was,
right.
they were just going around just sniping people and killing people. And so that's one I'm very, very excited for. Before the podcast was even a thought in either one of our minds, I didn't love it, but I was very fascinated by the DC Snipers.
Yeah.
It's a very, very fascinating topic.
It has some interesting themes in it too, like even some consistent ones from this case as well. I feel like manipulation, control.
Yeah, when they wanted to be referred to as God.
Oh, yeah,
know
that's
that? The tarot
Yeah,
cards?
yeah, yes.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, okay, we can't talk about the DC Snipers that much, but man, they could have gotten away with it. They had no idea. Okay, I'm sorry. We'll talk
Yeah.
about that next week.
It's gonna be good.
But they could have gotten away with it if they didn't start leaving letters claiming to be God. We'll talk about it next week. So thank you for listening. This is the Strangeland Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
In your